This happened to me in early 2024, and I'm still in therapy trying to work through it. I'm a senior at a university in upstate Pennsylvania, and at the time I was renting a place with two friends just off campus. We had gone away for spring break and came back to find the house had been broken into. It was gutting. A bunch of stuff was gone. My roommate's MacBook, our old Xbox, and a wad of cash that one of the girls had stupidly kept hidden under her mattress, like we were living in some kind of movie. It wasn't thousands or anything, just a few hundred, but that's still a lot of money for broke students like us. I remember walking up to the door, still kind of buzzing from vacation, and just stopping in my tracks, staring at it, hanging slightly open. We probably should have called the cops right away, but we went inside first, cautiously, and it was chaos. Whoever had done it hadn't taken that much, but they tore everything apart. Books and boxes tossed around, food dumped out, couch cushions everywhere. I had kept my door locked before we left, so I figured maybe they hadn't made it into my room. But my roommate, the one with the money, her whole space had been ransacked. We didn't feel safe staying there that night, so we booked a cheap motel and went back the next day to start cleaning up and figuring out exactly what was missing. Our friends and some of the girls' boyfriends came over to help, and by that evening, we had most of it straightened out. The place looked almost normal again, aside from the stuff we'd lost. The Xbox, the laptop, food we had to throw away. Little things like that. Over the next few days, we started making lists for insurance and trying to piece together what had actually been stolen. And at first it seemed like it was just those obvious items. But as time went on, we started realizing more little things were missing. My crock pot that I brought from home wasn't there. A photography book that we always kept on the living room shelf was gone. And weirdest of all, a framed picture of the three of us from last year's spring break had vanished. That photo always made me feel kind of weird, like I never really wanted it on display to begin with, because we were all in bikinis, and the idea of some stranger now having it made my skin crawl. That's when I started thinking, maybe it wasn't just some random break-in, like maybe it was someone who knew us. My roommate said I was being paranoid, and the cops reminded us there had been a bunch of burglaries in the area recently. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if it wasn't just about the electronics and cash? What if the person who did this had seen the photo and taken it for a reason? What if it wasn't random at all? Then one of my roommates mentioned that she thought a couple of her underwear pieces were gone, but she wasn't sure if she just left them at the hotel. I think she was trying to protect me from spiraling, because I was already obsessed with figuring out who had done this, but deep down we both knew they'd been taken. The same roommate with the missing money said a few pieces of her jewelry had vanished too, though none of her clothes were missing. I remember saying I was lucky they hadn't gotten into my room, and that's when the others reminded me that the type of lock I use, one of those that only locks from the inside, can easily be opened from outside with a screwdriver or something like that. That sent me straight into panic mode, and I started going through everything in my room. But at first I couldn't find anything missing. All my clothes were there, my underwear drawer looked untouched, and the necklace I got from my grandmother, probably the most expensive thing I owned, was still right where I'd left it. I thought maybe I was overreacting, and that night I went to bed trying to convince myself the worst was over, even though I couldn't sleep. I remember tossing and turning, and at some point I glanced at my nightstand and saw this pen just sitting there. It wasn't mine, and I didn't remember seeing it before. It was one of those decent-looking bank pens, the kind that's supposed to look fancy but is still cheap. I picked it up, tried to write with it on a sticky note, but it didn't work, so I just tossed it in the trash and tried to forget about it. But lying there in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and then I started scanning the room, and my shelves, and my wall photos. And that's when my eyes landed on this little teddy bear sitting in with my plushies. I couldn't remember getting that bear. I definitely didn't buy it, and I don't remember anyone giving it to me either. I stayed under the covers, grabbed my robe, pulled it on, and finally got out of bed to get a better look. It looked expensive, like something from one of those boutique stores. and it had glassy eyes that seemed too shiny. I picked it up and immediately felt something hard inside the stuffing. I turned it over, and sure enough, there was a small slit in the seam, like it had been carefully opened and sewn back. I reached in, heart racing, and pulled out a tiny black object. It was a spy cam. I completely lost it. I flipped every light on in my room and started searching everything. In total, I found 5 hidden cameras, the one inside the bear, another one disguised as the pen I'd thrown out, a creepy smiley face button pinned to my wallboard, a weird plush snail that had been tucked behind a few books, and then finally one more spy cam pen hidden in my bathroom. I called the police immediately, didn't even care that it was past midnight, and woke up my roommates while I waited. They helped me take apart everything, light fixtures, picture frames, the vents, and the cops bagged up what I'd found, but we never discovered any more devices after that, and I don't know if that made me feel better or worse, honestly. The cops said the cams broadcast wirelessly, but didn't record locally, which meant whoever set them up had to be close by to receive the signal. That was what really messed with my head. This wasn't some random burglar. This was someone who either lived nearby or had returned to our house after the break-in, and I couldn't stop imagining some sick creep sitting in his living room next door or parked outside in his car watching me on his phone while I got dressed or undressed or used the bathroom. I still can't believe how long those cameras were in there before I found them and how much of my life they might have captured. We all ended up staying with different friends after that. None of us felt safe in that house again, even though we kept going back to check for more devices. We never found anything else, but the damage was already done. I still have a hard time sleeping in any room that doesn't belong to me, and I'm constantly checking every corner for things that don't belong. The part that scares me the most, honestly, is how cheap and easy it was for this person to spy on us. Those cameras were the kind you can buy at Walmart or online for like $20, and they don't broadcast far, which means the person watching was close, maybe even just a few feet away, and that's the thought that stayed with me ever since. This happened to me 4 years ago when I was in my mid-20s, and to this day, I don't think I'll ever forget it because it's burned into my memory, like a scar that won't fade no matter how much time passes. It was the 15th of June, and I had the house to myself since my parents were away on a 2-week vacation in Italy. It was just after sunset, probably around 8 p.m., and the heat that night was brutal, the kind of humid, suffocating heat that makes it hard to breathe even with the windows open. I was wearing just a tank top and shorts, but still felt like I was melting, so I decided to let some air in and opened all the windows in the living room and my bedroom, planning to shut them later before going to bed. Now, before I jump ahead, I should say I was absolutely wiped that day after taking 3 university exams and playing in a volleyball match later that afternoon. So by the time I finished dinner and was scrolling through my phone in bed, I must have passed out without even realizing it. I woke up sometime around 3 in the morning to the sound of distant thunder and a cold draft hitting my face. The wind was loud, and the open shutters were banging against the walls. Still half asleep, I reached for the lamp, but the light didn't come on, and after checking the plug with my phone's flashlight, I realized the power was out. I dragged myself out of bed and walked over to the window. The sky was covered in thick, dark clouds, and I could tell a summer storm was rolling in. All the streetlights were out too, which confirmed the blackout. I grabbed my phone and started making my way down the hall to close the rest of the windows before the rain hit. When I got to the last one, I noticed something off. The mosquito screen was pushed up. That didn't make sense because I was sure I hadn't touched it. A little on edge, I turned around and scanned the room with my flashlight, but nothing seemed out of place. The furniture looked fine, the shelves were untouched, no drawers left open, nothing missing or moved. I stuck my head out the window to check the street. The trees were swaying wildly in the wind, and the leaves were being tossed around, but still there was nothing suspicious, no movement, no sounds apart from the storm. I tried to convince myself that the screen must have shifted from the wind, or maybe the latch was faulty and I was just being paranoid. Feeling slightly reassured, I shut the window and turned to head back to bed, hoping I could still get some rest. But as I passed the staircase that led up to the attic, I noticed something, a sudden flash of light coming from up there. I brushed it off at first because the attic had big glass windows, and it made sense for lightning to light up the room like that. I kept walking, waiting to hear the thunder, but it never came. I froze mid-step. That flash had been so bright, it should have been followed by thunder right away. The silence was too unnatural. That's when the thought hit me. What if it wasn't lightning? What if it was a flashlight? My stomach turned and everything started to click into place. The window screen pushed up, the silence, the power outage. It all started to feel like more than a coincidence. The fear crept in, and I suddenly felt like I was in real danger. Did someone break in while I was asleep? Did they know I was alone? Were they armed? Were they still upstairs? I was still trying to decide what to do when I heard something that made my blood run cold. The sound of a doorknob being slowly turned. My head snapped toward the front of the house, and through the frosted glass, in the entryway I saw it. A figure standing on the other side of the door, still and silent. I couldn't make out their face, but there was no doubt someone was there, and I knew instantly they weren't alone. I wanted to scream, but somehow I kept my composure and backed away as quietly as I could, tiptoeing toward the basement stairs. I figured I could sneak out through the garage, since it was connected down there, and maybe avoid them entirely. Still holding my phone like a lifeline, I crept down into the basement, and once I was out of earshot, I called emergency services, whispering into the receiver as I told the dispatcher what was going on. He stayed calm, told me to find a room I could lock myself in, and said officers were already on their way and should be there in less than 10 minutes. I was about to say I could escape through the garage when the line suddenly cut out. I looked at my phone and saw I had no signal down there, and to make things worse, the battery was almost drained. I didn't have time to look for another flashlight or wait around in the dark, so I moved quickly toward the garage door, hoping I could make it out before anything worse happened. But just as I reached for the handle, I got this sick feeling that I wasn't alone. I pointed my phone's flashlight toward the car, something in my gut telling me to check the back seats, and that's when I saw it. There was a face staring at me through the rearview mirror, pale and filthy with dead white eyes. Then slowly, deliberately, he dragged his hand across the inside of the window and gave me this twisted little wave. And that's when my phone died. Everything went black. I felt paralyzed for a second, and then pure adrenaline took over. I don't remember screaming, but I know I did, because my throat was raw later. Somehow I managed to wrench open the garage door and bolt up the driveway, the rain pounding down by then as I stumbled out into the street yelling for help. I ran to the neighbor's house and started banging on the door like a maniac until they came out half-dressed, completely shocked by the sight of me dripping wet and out of breath, barely able to explain what just happened. Not long after that, 2 squad cars came speeding around the corner, and I ran straight into one of the officers, telling them everything I'd seen. 4 of them went into the house immediately, while another stayed with me to get the details. But the men, whoever they were gone. They'd taken a few old valuables, but nothing major. Still, I knew they weren't just burglars, because the next morning when I finally felt safe enough to walk back into my bedroom, I found a slip of paper sticking out from under my pillow, and when I picked it up, I felt my entire body go numb. Written in small, shaky letters were the words, "See you, sweetheart. You looked so peaceful while you slept." This happened back in 2008, when I was about 15. My parents had gone out for the night, some casino event or something, so it was just me and our dog, Raven. It was close to 11, and I was upstairs chatting with friends on Instant Messenger while watching random videos on YouTube, not really paying attention to the time. I heard Raven start barking down in the living room, not just a bark or two either, she was going off. At first, I figured maybe my parents had come back, so I waited, expecting to hear the front door open. But after a full minute of nothing but barking and no sign of anyone coming in, I got up to check. When I reached the living room, Raven was facing the windows that looked out over the driveway, still barking her head off. I tried to look outside, but it was pitch black out there, and the outside lights were off, so I couldn't see much. There was only one car in the driveway, mine, so I knew no one else had pulled up. I assumed maybe she heard a neighbor's door slam or some loud engine passing by. It wasn't unusual for the street to stay noisy late. I went back upstairs, tried to ignore it, kept messaging, but something just didn't feel right. Every few minutes I'd catch a sound, something faint, like movement, but not close enough to be sure. Raven kept barking in bursts, pacing between rooms like she was trying to figure something out. I was about to get up again when I could swear I heard a soft knock, or maybe a brushing sound, coming from the front door. I headed back down, slowly, heart starting to race just a little. I looked through the living room window. Again, nothing. No shadows, no movement, no car, nothing but the dark. I couldn't bring myself to look through the peephole. Something about it just felt wrong, like if I did, I'd come face to face with something I didn't want to see. I double-checked the lock on the door, started to turn around, then heard knocking again, this time from the side of the house. That's when the fear really set in. My first thought was, maybe my parents forgot their keys, but it didn't make sense. Why would they go to the side door or the back, and why wouldn't they have called? Then I heard it. Someone jiggling the doorknob from below. Our basement entrance was under the deck, in the backyard, hidden unless you already knew it was there. You'd have to walk around the whole house and down a narrow path to even see it. I hadn't told anyone about that door, and hardly anyone knew it existed. Raven was barking louder than ever, almost screaming, running around in a panic. The noise from downstairs got more intense, until it just stopped. The silence felt like it lasted forever, and I was too scared to move. Then Raven bolted down the stairs, growling like I'd never heard before. She was a laid-back black lab who never hurt a soul, but something had set her off like she was ready to tear someone apart. I stood there frozen, listening, trying to figure out if someone had actually gotten in. Then Raven went quiet, just silence again. That's when it hit me that she might have been hurt, or worse. I finally moved, called her back upstairs, slammed the interior basement door shut, and locked it. Grabbed the home phone and ran with her into my parents' room, straight into the closet where my dad kept one of our guns. I sat there shaking, dialing 911 with the gun in my lap, about to speak, when I suddenly heard the front door open. Raven sprinted out before I could stop her. I yelled after her, but then heard familiar voices. My parents had just come home. I ran out to the living room and saw them petting Raven, both of them looking at me like I'd lost my mind. I was a mess, trying to explain everything that happened. Every noise, every knock, the door under the deck, Raven's behavior. My mom looked horrified, and my dad immediately grabbed his gun and started searching the house, inside and out, but nothing. Whoever it was had vanished. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, replaying every second. The next afternoon, there was a knock at the front door again. I froze. My heart just stopped. I ducked into the hallway while my dad went to answer it. Standing there was my uncle. Let's just call him Mark. He was always off. Everyone knew it. He made people uncomfortable without really doing anything you could point at. The kind of guy who smiled too much at the wrong things. He handed my dad an envelope and mumbled something about dropping it off the night before, but no one being home. I couldn't hear all of it, but a few seconds later, I heard the door slam. My mom and I stepped out to ask what happened, and my dad, shaking with fury, told us it was Mark who'd been sneaking around the house. He said he'd come by to leave a card for me as a thank you for helping his daughter with softball, but he never knocked, never called, never left the card anywhere. Just wandered the property, in the dark, trying doors. I opened the envelope. It was a basic card with a cheap gift card inside, just a "thanks for your help" message. It didn't matter. After that, we stopped seeing him. No family gatherings, no dinners. My dad made it clear he wasn't welcome. I still don't understand what he was thinking. Why come by so late? Why try every door instead of just calling? Why sneak around under the deck near the basement? And what would have happened if Raven hadn't been there to scare him off? I'll never know. And honestly, I don't think I want to. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content. Thanks for watching.